Hello and welcome back to An Old Man Watches, where today I'm going to be talking about the last five Lethal Ladies movies from Andy Sidaris, which, as an entire series, began in 1985 with Malibu Express, but these are all films from the 90s. And they begin with 1993 offering Fit to Kill, the eighth of the films, in which a Chinese businessman named Chang wants to return a diamond to the Russian authorities. It seems the jewel was stolen by a Nazi general during the siege of Leningrad, a plot point that mostly seems to be an excuse to throw in some World War II stock footage. Chang subsequently acquired the jewel and now wants to return it to the original owners. Why does that need secret agents to be involved? Well, because international crime boss Kane is back and wants the jewel for himself. Next is Enemy Gold, which came out the same year. Now, frankly, this film recycles the same basic premise of long lost treasure and the team's efforts to get it back to its proper owners. In this case, however, the treasure is lost Union gold from the American Civil War, which the team stumble across while on suspension for violating agency rules and on a camping trip. Third comes 1994's The Dallas Connection. This time, the team are employed to protect a scientist from the deadly assassin Black Widow, who, along with her team Cobra, Scorpion, and Platypus, guess who was late for work on Codename Day, have been targeting everyone associated with a particular secret project. Complicating the case, the man they've been assigned to protect is actually the Black Widow's employer all along. Then we have the penultimate offering, Day of the Warrior, which came 2 years later. In this film, four agents attempt to take down a former fellow agent turned pro wrestler turned international criminal mastermind, the Warrior. This is all very much more of the same, except it's the first film to really roll out the dad jokes in amongst all the bare bosoms and poorly staged action scenes. How dad jokey is it? Well, I'll paraphrase the most memorable of these attempts at humour. It's real flat back home. When your dog runs away, you can still see him 3 days later. And then we finally reach the end of the franchise with the 1998 release Return to Savage Beach, which, as the title suggests, calls back to earlier and frankly more enjoyable Sidaris film Savage Beach. Sidaris uses this fact to include a chunk of recycled footage from the earlier film as the agents narrate the events of that movie to each other. The new parts of the plot, meanwhile, are all pretty standard Sidaris stuff, with lots of flashy vehicles and topless ladies sprinkled through as is normal. He does, for the first time, manage to shoot a sex scene that actually approaches being sexy in this film, though, so I guess we have to give him some points for that. Now, I've done videos about Andy Sidaris films before, so I've already spoken about the production history of the series and Sidaris' prior career in sports broadcasting. I'm not going to go over that again. I'm also pretty comprehensively covered the core features of his movie offerings: bare bosoms, cheesy dialogue, apparently unintended farce, and a blithe disregard for any kind of coherency when it comes to casting actors. All of those features remain here in these five films, but I feel like reiterating them further would just be repeating myself. So instead, I'm going to focus on the specific features of these five films and the ways in which they differ from or evolve from what has come before. And the first change is in the bust lines of the women being cast. Fit to Kill is the seventh and final appearance of Donna Spear. The March 1984 Playboy Playmate of the Month had been the leading lady of every film in the franchise since Hard Ticket to Hawaii, and by 1993 was actually beginning to show some, you know, adequacy as an actor, certainly by the standards of these films. She was a former gymnast and a track athlete, epitomizing the slim but toned beauty ideal of the 1980s. But it was now the 1990s, and striding into the franchise came the voluptuous 6 foot tall figure of Penthouse Pet of the Year, Julie Strain. Strain went on to appear in all of the remaining Lethal Ladies films, initially as a variety of improbably named villains, and then as the primary hero. Her arrival heralded a significant shift in the body types of the leading women in these films, as she was soon joined by the even more buxom Julie K. Smith and Shay Marks. Someone on Sidaris' casting team definitely had a type, and it wasn't the thin, waifish look that was coming to dominate the fashion world of the mid 90s, that's for sure. The other notable arrival in these films comes to the party quite late. This is professional actor Marcus Buff Bagwell, who debuts as the villain in Day of the Warrior and reprises this role in Return to Savage Beach. More on that second film later. For now, let's focus on the man himself and his performance in his debut appearance. Now, Bagwell himself is a somewhat notorious figure in professional wrestling. First for some of the storylines he was part of during his decade long career at the now defunct WCW promotion, and second for his embarrassingly brief subsequent tenure at WWE after that company purchased the bankrupt WCW. Bagwell would appear on WCW TV for the first time on July 1st, 2001, and be fired 8 days later, possibly for his attitude, possibly because of a backstage altercation, possibly because the company thought he was faking an injury. Accounts differ. Bagwell's best known pro wrestling stint, where he portrayed a cocky bad guy with the catchphrase, "I'm buff, I'm the stuff," coincided with the making of these films. And I've got to give it to him. He is easily the most entertaining person on screen whenever he is on screen. Now, let's be clear, he's not facing much competition here. Julie Strain's virtues as a performer were never her acting ability. And one of the other primary roles in Day of the Warrior is an egregiously racist Asians caricature. But Bagwell's clearly having fun translating his arrogant bad guy shtick to what was, at the time, as I said, his first non-wrestling screen credit. And he's more fun to watch than a lot of the other people. I think to some extent because he's not taking it all that seriously. Now, Andy Sidaris films have never cared much for continuity. The villain Kane was played first by Pat Morita and then by Jeffrey Moore, son of James Bond actor Roger Moore. Rodrigo Obregon appears in 10 of these films, never twice as the same character, and dies in almost all of those appearances. Similarly, Julie Strain plays 4 different characters in her 5 movies, the first 3 roles all being villains, and the last being heroic agent. And Sidaris handles all of these continuity issues the simplest way possible. He ignores them. Kane is Kane, whether he's a 5'3" Japanese American or a 6'3" Englishman. Blue Steel, Jewel Panther, and Black Widow are all different people, even if they're all clearly played by the same person, and so forth. For some reason, though, perhaps because the film itself is conceived as a direct sequel to Savage Beach, he does not follow this same pattern when Buff Bagwell returns for the final film as a good guy. So instead of just saying, here's some muscly new agent, ignore the fact that he looks just like the bad guy from the last film, which is kind of what he'd done, 10 times by now, Sidaris instead brings Bagwell back, still playing the warrior, and offers a contorted justification for why the archvillain of movie 11 is now on the side of the angels in movie 12. As the warrior explains to Julie Strain's character, Willow Black, the federal agent he slew in the previous film was actually a serial killer, and, he served 3 months for his thefts, so, all is forgiven with the warrior, right? Well, you might expect Strange's character to point out that the warrior attempted to kill her as well and feel a little bit conflicted about this, but she proves far more interested in having awkwardly choreographed simulated sex with him instead. This is an Andy Sidaris movie, after all. So, I mean, that's how these films are different from the movies that have come before. They're really not different in any other significant way. They're poorly acted, poorly written bits of fluff with, one primary purpose, which is to get ladies naked on screen. I think they're very much a product of their time. Next time, the first feature-length adaptation of Robert Louis Stevenson's famous novella Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, which came to silent screens all the way back in March 1920. That's 104 years ago, and if you want to put some context on that, if you went back 104 years from 1920, it'd be at a time when Queen Victoria had not even been born, and there were only 19 states in the USA. So, 104 years is a long time. That is next time. Until then, thanks for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. And if you've seen Andy Sidaris' movies, let me know what you thought of them.